Okay, well, hello everyone. My name is Marcia Questel. I am a BCBA and I've been working with neurodiverse individuals for over 20 years, children and adults. And I am a behavior and program consultant. I do work with individuals personally. I also work with teams. I also am contracted to work with schools. Currently, I am a research fellow here at the Yale Child Study Center, working with Dr. Roger Joe. And I'm also the content editor and externship co-coordinator for the Association for Science in Autism Treatment. Today we're going to be talking about play, and that play is a human right. And we'll get into some discussions about what play is and why it's a human right. And if you want to learn any more about my work or my interests or my academic path, you can go ahead and visit me at marciaquestel.com. Okay. So part of this talk is sponsored by Spark. Every person with autism is different, and therefore every person's story and participation is important. So Spark is the largest autism research organization and the largest autism research study ever conducted. You can contact us at sparkforautism@yale.edu. You can also call our office at 203-785-7539. I also have a QR code there for you to scan if you'd like to email us through that. And we are more than happy to answer any questions you have about Spark. And we welcome anyone who has an autism diagnosis to join the Spark study. And we are also always looking to reach out to allies in this community and professionals in this community and families so that we can better support the community as a whole. And part of our mission here is the Casey Sparks group. This is the Cultural Autistic Studies at Yale. And that's also led by Dr. Roger Joe here. And we meet through Meetup. You can find us at that link, meetup.com/Project Casey. And you can also find our information on socials like YouTube and Facebook. And we're having really rich discussions in that group about autistic experience and autistic culture. And we welcome anyone to join those. It's completely free, and you can just observe if you join us, and you're not obligated to participate at all. We also welcome people who would rather keep their videos and mics off and only participate through the chat. And then we also have people who join us and are, quite verbose and are able to have their video on and mic on. So any form of participation is welcome, and it is always free. And we welcome you to join us anytime at Casey Sparks. And of course, I always love to tell folks about ASAT because ASAT shares information about autism and its treatment and its support that is scientifically based. So there's never any snake oil salesman, there's never any misinformation about autism. And if you check out ASAT online, there's stuff there for autistic individuals, parents, professionals, teachers, pediatricians, and educators, college educators. So check out asatonline.org and you can find some really nice, rich information. We also have a newsletter that's just monthly, so you're not going to have a flooded inbox. And the newsletter is really carefully curated with authors from around the world and goes under a peer review process where we really make sure that the information is valid as far as where the science stands currently. And we really welcome, really international collaboration. So that's an exciting website as well. So our objectives today are to describe what play is and the importance of play, to outline the concept of human rights and why play is one of them, and to illustrate some basic steps for increasing opportunities for play and how to have fun. So also save the date. There's some more upcoming talks about play if you're interested. In August, we'll be talking about helping siblings play together. And in September, teaching emotion regulation through play. In November, we'll talk about teaching tolerance of others and helping behaviors through play. And then our final talk in January of 2025 is structuring playdates for success. You can see the full list of the upcoming talks on the last slide. And of course, you can always reach out to me at MQ89, that's Marcia Questel, so MQ89 at yale.edu. If you'd like any of the recordings that we do for these talks, or if you'd like any of the slides, I'm more than happy to share these with you. All right, so let's dive into it. What is play? So the National Institute for Play, which by the way sounds like a place I would love to work, says that play is a state of mind that one has when absorbed in an activity that provides enjoyment and a suspension of sense of time. And play is self-motivated, so you want to do it again and again. All right. Dr. Stuart Brown has been studying play for a very long time, and I think that's a really nice way to think about play, that it's something that you want to do on your own terms. It's something you want to do again and again. But for a more precise definition of play, Catherine Garvey says that play is pleasurable, enjoyable, and even when not actually accompanied by signs of mirth, like laughter, it's still positively valued by the player. And play has no extrinsic goals. So its motivations are intrinsic and serve no other objectives, right? You're not trying to accomplish something when you're playing. In fact, it's more an enjoyment of means than an effort devoted to some particular end. In utilitarian terms, it's inherently unproductive, right? So when you're playing, you're just doing it for the love of doing it, not necessarily because you want some particular end to occur. Play is spontaneous and voluntary. It's not obligatory, but is freely chosen by the player. Play involves some active engagement on the part of the player, and play has certain systematic relations to what is not play. And that fifth component is really important when we're talking about play that is really developmentally helpful. And so let's give an example. For example, I have a friend who is a painter and another who's a photographer. And they're both professionals in their fields. And when they are either painting or taking photographs, and they're just doing it for the love of doing it, like one friend is just putting paint on canvas, another is out with her camera. They're doing it because it's enjoyable. They are not necessarily working to hone those skills for some particular end. They don't have a particular objective. They're really enjoying doing it, right? They're doing it spontaneously. They're not being obligated to do it, and they're actively engaged in it. And it might have some systematic relation, such as like expressing their emotions or connecting them with their environment in some way. And so you can see how those art forms are play for them, but also they do it for work. So it may look exactly the same in terms of the action, like the act of painting or the act of taking photos, but sometimes it's work, right? If they're contracted to do this, if they are at a photo shoot, if they are at a wedding, right? Like taking photos at a wedding, if they have been contracted to provide a painting for a particular office building or something, like, you know that they do have extrinsic goals, right? That has to be done for the other people who contracted them to do it. It may be enjoyable, but it may not be. That's not necessarily a part of it. If they're working, they do have a productive end. They do have a particular end that they're looking for. It's not spontaneous and voluntary. They've been asked to do this. It is obligatory because they're contracted to do it. And although they are engaged, it's not something that is connecting with them in some other meaningful way, right? So this is the difference between what might look like play, but is actually work. And so play can mean different things to different people, but that's really sort of determined by the player. So why does play matter? Play is crucial for healthy mammalian development. And I linked here a really great article, Training for the Unexpected. And I'm going to talk a little bit about that because I think that it shows us the mammalian connection. And as you know, mammals play, not just humans play. So, in short, they propose that play results in increased versatility of movements used to recover from sudden gravitational, kinematic, or positional shocks, such as losing ground underfoot, falling over, being knocked over, being pinned down, or being shaken vigorously, and enhances the ability of animals to cope emotionally with unexpected situations. These may include both locomotor shocks, as described above, or psychological shocks, such as suddenly being faced with frightening or dangerous stimuli, unexpectedly meeting a stranger, or experiencing a sudden reversal in dominance. And so you can imagine the kind of play that we see with tiger cubs, bear cubs, little juvenile mice or rats. We can see that with all types of primates. We see that they push each other over, horse around, right? They do rough and tumble play. And so we know that these have an evolutionary purpose, they have a developmental purpose. And so these authors do posit that it provides a preparation for things that can happen to them in their adult survival needs. So, play deprivation results in increased fear and uncertainty in novel environments. So, they've done experiments where they've deprived juveniles of play, and this results in more fear and uncertainty. So, when they take, for example, rats in a lab and deprive them of play, they display uncertainty in novel environments, they go somewhere new, they have more fear, they also display more escalated aggressive behavior towards conspecifics or members of the same species. So if there is a conflict, these juveniles who are now adults who are deprived of play are more quick to escalate things because they're acting with greater fear and sort of reacting to that. Individuals may, through play, find and develop their own personal methods for coping with different kinds of unexpected misfortune. And so, this is a great translation to human development where we know that play provides a, a setting where individuals can really practice unfortunate events and complex situations. So, play helps us to practice social situations that occur in more difficult or more complex situations, right? That's why it matters so much. In play, it's all big stuff. It all matters, right? We talk about how when our children talk to us about something that's happening in play with them or something that's happening at school, uh, general parenting advice is to listen to the small stuff because it's all big stuff, right? We want to validate those feelings. We want to listen to our children talk. We want to show them that their concerns are real and meaningful. And we want to treat it all like it's big stuff because this is their learning phase. They're learning to handle the big stuff that happens in adulthood. And so children are able to practice things, including but not limited to conflict resolution. If they're talking about a fight that they had with a friend on the playground, or if they're not talking to you about it and they're just experiencing it, they're practicing that conflict resolution. They're practicing how to negotiate when they disagree with a peer. They're also practicing empathy. What if a friend that they're playing with falls down? Should they continue to move on and pursue the play situation, or should they stop, be flexible, turn, offer help, right? Practicing empathy shows them that in order to continue enjoying the company of the other person, the empathy is an important component of that social situation. Failure, such a big part of play, and it's something that a lot of parents have trouble allowing their children to be exposed to. So, failure in play can be something as simple as running and falling down, losing a game, or trying to make something that isn't going well. And those experiences are really important. And we want children to be exposed to small doses of play and play failure and uncertainty so that they can systematically build that strength. And just like physical demands, right? When they're doing physical demands, they're running, they're having to use a lot of endurance and stamina. They may be climbing and having to build their muscle strength. They're practicing things like eye-hand coordination, and all those physical demands prepare them for later physical growth and development. And so I tell parents that that exposure to failure and uncertainty is very similar because you can't rest on strength that you've never developed, right? If you have never lifted anything heavy, you are not going to develop the strength to lift heavy things. And so same thing when it comes to emotions and tolerance and, really being someone who can compromise and be flexible, those things are learned through play, and in play is where children learn all of those sort of building blocks for the future needs of their adult social situations and occupations. Okay, so it's time for our first poll. So I'm going to, and this is going to be for anyone who's here in the live meeting. And it's a quick yes or no. So have you ever heard that play is a human right? So before today's talk, has that ever been something that you've ever heard of at all? So play is a human right. So 100% of our participants very quickly answered no. Great. I'm so excited. So that's awesome. So I just am so glad to share this information with you. And I think that that's what I expected, is that most participants would not have ever heard that play is a human right. So let's get into that. So what are human rights? So we all sort of know what human rights are, but according to the UN, human rights are inherent to all human beings, right? Regardless of their race, sex, nationality, ethnicity, language, religion, or any other status, including neurotypicality or neurodivergence, right? No matter what, these rights are inherent to all people. Human rights include the right to life and liberty, freedom from slavery and torture, freedom of opinion and expression, the right to work and education, and many more. Everyone is entitled to these rights without discrimination, and so on. So when it comes to neurodiverse individuals, we must consider what their language preferences are, what liberty means to them, and their freedom of opinion and expression, and more. So we have to keep in mind that there are some differences there that are rights that are inherent to them, regardless of their language preferences, their language needs, their needs for support, and what liberty means to them, what their opinions are, how they prefer to express themselves. Okay, so the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, Article 24, talks about leisure for adults. Safeguarding workers' physical and mental health is not only compassionate, it helps to ensure high productivity. On the other hand, overwork, too many hours and past one's capacity, can be fatal. So this is talking about the adult side of leisure, that we do need to provide physical and mental health breaks and allow people to have some downtime. And it's interesting because the idea that the poor should have leisure has always been shocking to the rich. I love that quote. I think that it's something we have to sort of challenge ourselves to think about, and maybe challenge our colleagues to think about. And I do think that there is an ableistic and sort of bias thing that happens when we think about neurodiverse folks, that they have to work harder, or that they have to endure insane therapy schedules in order to catch up to the neurotypical um, expectations of them. And so while I do believe that a lot of therapy can be very helpful, we do have to make sure we understand that overwork for neurodiverse people, it is more than likely to lead to burnout and also a lot of lower productivity, right? So if they have personal goals to increase certain aspects of their skill sets, um, we have to make sure that we don't overburden their schedules. And so I want to make sure that I put that out there as something that, again, is a protected human right, regardless of neurodivergence or ability. I shared this in a previous talk, but I just want to quickly cover the Child Welfare League of America says that children's rights are human rights that are essential to living as human beings. Children's rights are absolute and fundamental to advancing the human rights of all human beings, and each child has a right to be raised in a nurturing, loving family with basic needs like food, primary health care, and formal education. You can also visit Human Rights Watch, and that link goes to different state laws regarding child labor, corporal punishment, child marriage, and juvenile justice. And you might be interested to see what your state laws are and how they compare to other state laws on those matters. And you can also visit UNICEF, the United Nations International Children's Emergency Fund, and this is sort of the children's part of the UN. And that link goes to the UN Convention on the Rights of the Child, which we are going to talk more about. It's a very important set of international guidelines agreed on by all parties of the UN except the United States. So literally every other country that's in the UN has agreed to the UN Convention on the Rights of the Child, except the United States. And I believe that that's because there are American constituents and lawmakers that believe that certain aspects of that agreement infringe on parental rights. And so you can check that out and think that over. And I'd love to hear your opinions on it if you want to email me. Okay, so when it comes to children, human rights are special. UNICEF works in over 190 countries and territories to save children's lives, defend their rights, and help them fulfill their potential from early childhood through adolescence. And according to UNICEF, recalling that the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, the United Nations has proclaimed that childhood is entitled to special care and assistance. States parties of the UN recognize the right of a child to rest and leisure. Okay, so it is right in the UN. It is listed as a human right for children to engage in play and recreational activities appropriate to the age of the child and to participate freely in cultural life and the arts. That's Article 31, and I did link that there. States parties shall respect and promote the right of the child to participate fully in cultural and artistic life and shall encourage the provision of appropriate and equal opportunities for cultural, artistic, recreational, and leisure activity. Meaning that children should be given time to take part in their communities, whether that's through religious community meetings, whether that's through points of interest at the park or museums or other places where children meet, that they can create, have opportunities created for them to engage in leisure, to engage in play, and to have rest and to be a part of their communities. So it is listed in Article 31 in the Convention on the Rights of the Child. So let's talk about what kind of play matters. So I'm going to talk about 5 types of play, not those commonly thought of in the social contest text described by Parton in 1932. A lot of people think of types of play like parallel play and cooperative play, and those are really important because they talk about the player in relation to others. So like onlooker, that they're watching people play, or parallel, that they're playing with items next to another person but not necessarily cooperating. So all of those things are still very important. That's just not what we're going to be talking about today. We're going to be talking about types of play that can be done solo or with others. So physical play, play with objects, symbolic play, pretend sociodramatic play, or games with rules. So these types of play can happen regardless of with others, or regardless of whether you're with others or not. So if you are engaged in physical play, that could just be running, that could be just playing physically with others, anything like that. Playing with objects means like meaningfully, like shovels and pails and sand. Symbolic play is, of course, what it sounds like. So you are using a stick and pretending it's a sword or pretending it's a wand. Sociodramatic play would be, pretending that you are a character in some other pretend world. And games with rules are things like board games or sports. And this is through really great work through Whitebread and colleagues. So unstructured play is a crucial component of play. And there's a problem right now, and I'm not going to read this whole thing, but there's a problem of parental over supervision and over scheduling of children. And that's happened across most of the developed world. It's a worldwide issue. And where children are allowed to range unsupervised around their homes, that area has shrunk by 90% since the 70s. So children are not able to roam, they're not able to go places on their own. Mothers in surveys have talked about, increases in crime or increased fears about crime, um, and other issues like very serious things like abduction to other things like dirt and germs. So, we really do overprotect our children now, much more than we ever have. And so at the same time, rates of obesity, self-harm, and mental health disorders diagnosed in children have climbed significantly. And a lot of people are talking about this phenomenon of the nature deficit disorder. Okay, so just thinking about the fact that overscheduling and overworking children and over supervising them and not giving them freedom actually does have a detrimental effect on their development. I also highly recommend this book, The Anxious Generation. It's by Jonathan Haidt, and he really takes a deep dive into the overprotection of children in the real world, right? That means like this current physical world, and underprotection of children in the virtual world. And so, if you're interested in those things and sort of social media and the detrimental effects of that, then I highly recommend this book. Outdoor unstructured play, or free play is super, super important for child development, and that sort of leans back to that mammalian development that we talked about before. So this is child-driven play in an environment that has open air and nature. Okay, children are encouraged to pursue whatever activities they feel inspired to, and that also leans into that idea of the definition of play, that it's not obligatory, that it's voluntary. We really want play to be actually play, not just play-like activities where children are not doing academic work, but really spontaneous, totally voluntary play. Stephen Moss is a naturalist who says nature is a tool to get children to experience not just the wider world, but themselves. So giving children access to nature allows them to explore themselves in relation to the rest of the world. So their sense of self in space, their sense of their connection to physical space and nature, their own bodies, and also, of course, there's all of the natural elements like sunlight and fresh air that are really good for children. This is a very long list of the benefits of outdoor unstructured play. I'm not going to read all of them, but you're free to read them when you receive the slides. So it allows children that freedom, like I talked about before, that really self-driven voluntary play that they can use their imaginations. They're, of course, embracing the benefits of nature, and they have that ability to just create their world and create their play as they see fit. I do want to read these examples because they're really good. Children challenging themselves by climbing a tree, developing bilateral muscle control, developing the ability to assess their ability and the risk, gaining confidence from achieving something they thought not possible, right? So just in climbing a tree, children are naturally learning without being told to learn it so many things. And I think my favorite one is their ability to assess risk. We do have a tendency now in present days to assess risk for our children. We tell them, don't do that, that's too dangerous. And sometimes that's absolutely necessary, 100%. We don't want our children, you know, figuring out that they can't go in the street. We have to teach them that. But there are certain times and places where we can hold back. Children walking home in unpleasant weather. We might want to save them from that. Even if we're walking with them, we might say, okay, you stay with the neighbor and I'll go get the car. If they walk home in unpleasant weather, are they definitely going to get sick? We have, maybe not. It can shape a growth mindset. It can be something they do with friends to learn about cheering each other on and getting through that hard time. Learning perseverance and resiliency, that all they had to do was keep going and eventually they'd get home and be warm and dry. Right? Those kinds of things, that little bit of exposure to discomfort, that exposure to uncertainty, those kinds of things are really helpful for children to learn. We talked about like really leaning on muscles that are getting developed, meaning your emotional and mental muscles, right? We can't lean on things that we've never developed if we always expect to be saved from every discomfort, or that someone will prevent or solve every discomfort. The regulating effect of being outdoors, emotional regulation with children who struggle to manage big emotions, the calming grounding effect through biological responses that impact us all, but especially children who struggle to tame big feelings of anger or sadness. Learning about being outside is a simple tool to help with emotional regulation. So the outdoors is so massive when you can go to an outdoor space that is really open and all-encompassing, where children have the ability to run safely, to engage in some of this risky play. They can actually work through some big emotions just through the physical experience of it. And also, if they do experience some levels of sadness or discomfort in these natural spaces, they can work through it with their parent rather than it only happening in, more potentially stigmatizing, risky social situations. Okay, so it is time for our second poll. I'm going to pull that up for you. So how much outdoor free play does a child need per day? So you're just going to make one selection that you think is best. How much outdoor free play does a child need per day? So I got some answers like 30 minutes and 60 minutes. Okay, great. Okay, and then we're going to go on to our final poll. And I promise this is the last one. How much free play do you think the average American child really gets per day? Okay, so I got answers like 10 minutes and 15 minutes. And let's see what the answers are. How much time are children supposed to spend outside? 3 hours per day. And I know that that sounds impossible in today's world. If you are shaking your head, I totally understand that. It is wild to think that amidst the hustle and bustle of jobs and school and after-school activities and homework and meal times, how could we possibly meet 3 hours a day outside? So absolutely, I understand that. But this is the recommendation. So that children have 3 hours outside per day is what is considered healthy for their development. And how much time do children spend outside? Now, this is the average American child, less than 10 minutes per day. So right now, according to recent research, children are spending somewhere between 5 to 7 minutes of unstructured playtime outside. Now, for those of you in my generation and those before me, we were told to get outside and come home when the lights came on. There were advertisements, not advertisements, but PSAs that said, it's 10 p.m. Do you know where your children are? And so we experienced a different kind of freedom in the outdoors, and we're told to be outside a ton more than children today are. And we did. So we did spend a lot of time outside, and we were unsupervised for a lot of that time. And that's not to say that we didn't experience risk. That doesn't mean that we didn't experience danger. And that doesn't mean that there aren't real dangers to be avoided today. But it is striking, right? The vast difference between the recommended amount of time that children have outside to be free and unstructured, not just like in sports. Um, the difference between that and how much they're actually getting. Whereas, and I didn't put a poll on this, but American children are spending more than that amount of time on screens per day. And that's not just including their computer time in school, but their home time and their downtime is spent on screens a lot more. And there is an issue there, right? We cannot deny that we have a difficulty as parents today that we didn't have in generations past. It's not just the idea of getting the kids to go outside, it's getting them off the screens first. A lot of parents tell me that's the battle. It's not just having them go outside, but it's getting them off the screens first. And so I totally understand that. I do have children of my own, and we do live in a modern society, so they're not immune to this issue by any means. And so it is really, really troubling for parents today and didn't exist in generations past. Okay, parents didn't have to deal with this, and now we do. And so learning how to navigate that really does take a community effort. And that previous book that I recommended by Jonathan Haidt talks about how if communities can come together and prioritize more community goals about not giving, young children cell phones or social media, or having agreements not to have phones in certain spaces, like during classes and things like that, that communities can decide for themselves what their priorities are. And for sure, we are seeing those detrimental effects of decreased time outside and increased screen time on children's mental health. And I do think that it has to do with that pairing, right? Where we say we need children to experience discomfort, we need them to experience freedom, we need them to experience some risk taking and risk assessment of their own, but with our help and our boundaries, right? We're not just going to say today, yeah, I've never let you do this before, but you can go walk to the store. No, that would be unrealistic and probably dangerous for the child who has never done that before. But thinking about it in these terms that we want to increase their play, we want to increase their unstructured time outside, we want to decrease their screen time, we want to develop their emotional, their mental, and their physical strengths through that, like I mentioned, that sort of mammalian research and also the human research, and also emotion regulation research. We want to increase these things and get children to develop these strengths systematically so that they can become healthy adults who have resilience, who have emotion regulation, who have coping skills, who know how to get themselves out of dangerous situations, who know how to have situational awareness. All those strengths need to be developed throughout childhood and adolescence because you can't rest on strengths that you've never developed. So how can we increase play and fulfill this human right for our kids? Remember the 5 types of play, right? We have physical play, play with objects, symbolic play, the socio-dramatic play, and games with rules. Make it a real goal, okay? Just like anything else. We teach our children manners. We teach our children to say please and thank you. We teach them to behave in culturally polite ways. We encourage healthy eating. So think of these things like a healthy, balanced diet. You cannot be healthy without some of all of these. Be sure to have some of each throughout each week. And you can see my prior talk with specific advice. And I'd be happy to share slides with you or send the recording to you. But really making it a priority, understanding that play is not just a human right, but it is a developmental need for children, and that we really need to make it a priority. We need to increase play access because play isn't just fluff. Play isn't just, something kids do when they have some time left over after all of these schedules that they have to keep and all of the demands that they have. But really thinking of it as a priority that maybe has to get higher up on your priority list. So think about it. Think about what it means to you, what it means to your children. Think about where they are now in terms of how much play they have, how much playtime they have opportunities for, and how you could systematically increase it as a real goal. I do like to consider charts like the 1,000 Hours Outside Challenge. It doesn't matter if you accomplish it, they actually celebrate failing well with the 1,000 Hours Outside. That's for a 1 year challenge to try to get 1,000 hours outside, and it increases growth mindset opportunities. They do have helpful trackers like this. They have many different styles, there's different themes, but basically you color in one tiny section of it, and over time it grows and grows. And if you at the end of a year had 500 hours outside, perfect, right? It doesn't matter. It's just thinking of it as a real goal and something that you can sort of keep track of. And again, this is only one example. They have lots of trackers with different themes like space themes or like woodland themes or whatever. Um, and you can also just make your own or use something on your phone if you want. They also have an app that you can use, but just thinking of it as, a real goal. And I also screenshot their paragraph about it because it's about the journey, right? It's not a competition. It's about just increasing outdoor play um, as a human right and as something to increase for our children in order to help them build up all of these skills that we've been talking about. So, in our conclusions, play is crucial for human development. Okay, it's really, really, really important. Even if the UN never made it a human right, it really is crucial. We have that translational research from mammalian research, and we also have tons of research on play for children's neurological development, for their physical development, for things like obesity and diabetes risk, right? Play is really crucial for human development. And play is a human right, right? And we've learned that today. I'm so happy to share this with my participants today that, and anyone who watches this recording later, that play is a human right according to the UN UNICEF. Different types of play support development in different ways. And we should think of them like a diverse and healthy diet where we aren't settling for only one type of play, right? You wouldn't only eat one vegetable for the rest of your life or only eat one meat for the rest of your life, right? You want to have a nice, diverse play diet, and that sustains our health. And creating and continuously offering diverse types of play and leisure to ourselves and our children is super healthy. American children and children around the world are not getting nearly enough unstructured playtime, and it is impacting their health in major ways, mental and physical. And there's something we can do about it, right? We can make it a real goal, like our other priorities, find ways to track that goal if needed, and place real value on play. And I love this quote. I shared it in my last talk, and I think I'll continue sharing it whenever I'm talking about play and joy, that autistic joy is the greatest act of resistance in a world that was not made for us. And that's by Matt Lowry of the Autistic Culture podcast. So with that, I'd like to say thanks. Thanks for everyone who's joining me. Thanks for everyone who's watching this talk later. Thank you for the neurodiverse community, for Spark at Yale, Casey Sparks, the Yale School of Medicine, the Yale Child Study Center, and of course, Dr. Roger Joe, my mentor and the lead in our group here at the Yale Child Study Center. So with that, I am going to go ahead and stop the recording, and then we'll go into our Q&A session.